Welcome to Podcrushed. We're glad you're here. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Nava Kaplan and Sophie and Nava.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Comment ça va?
Bonjour. Ah, je ne parle pas
Oh
français.
là là!
Mais je pense que...
Penn, do the whole intro in French.
Bienvenue à
Ouais,
Podcrushed.
C'est ça. That's all I've got. I can just say je ne parle pas français with enough of an accent that people who speak French think, oh, do you speak French? And the answer is really no.
And then you're stuck.
No, mais no.
No,
Penn,
mais no.
actually, you have been home wrapped with You,
Yes.
your show, You, for a minute now. Tell us about how it's been.
You know, so we had our crazy trip out in LA where I got food poisoning, and that was that was a nice little punch to the gut, a nice cleanse. I don't, people have been asking that for some time. It hasn't started to dawn on me in a serious way. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of just going about life. We're developing some things. We have meetings. There's still, I'm engaging in things. Nothing that substantive has changed yet.
Yeah,
You
and
know what
by
I mean?
the way, you're never going to be fully wrapped on developing things. just
Yeah,
like a little disclaimer.
Exactly. We have today Luca Bravo, who you might think is named Lucas Bravo, but he's French, so the S is silent. And he was very, very amenable to us pronouncing it however we wanted. But it is Luca Bravo. You know him from Emily in Paris. Now, in November, his new film Freedom is out November 1st. It's called Libre, so in French, en français. It's inspired by a true story of Bruno Silac, a thief who infamously masterminded jewelry store robberies in the 1970s and early 1980s. It is a beautiful, beautiful film. We couldn't be happier to have Luca on today. It was a deep conversation. We really connected. Please stick around. Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Sophie,
And I'm Nava, and I think we would have been your middle school besties.
fantasizing about our French teachers.
Luca, thank you so much for being a part of this. And just to be clear, you are coming to us from the dressing
New
room at
York.
Kelly Clarkson's show?
Yes.
Yes, New York.
Yes.
But more specifically, that dressing room.
Yes.
Did you know that we've had Kelly Clarkson on our show too? You guys should, if it comes up naturally, you should just like talk about our show on hers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, give us a plug.
I will. Honestly, I will.
Okay, we'll be watching.
Where we start on this show with everybody, I don't know if you're aware, is in middle school or around about age like 11, 12, 13. So we focus on this coming of age. And for you, I mean, from what we gather, it sounds like this is when you first quite unexpectedly started improv classes.
Yes.
And it sounds like you moved around a lot because your father was a professional footballer.
Right.
So please, just give us a snapshot of you at 12 years old, how you were seeing the world, what school was like, what home was like, and all of that.
So as you said, I was derooted quite a few times. I think we moved maybe 18 times.
18 times. Wow.
Yeah, different cities.
Wow.
We were in Italy. We were in south of France, north, east, west. We did a few cities. Yeah, it's weird because you're torn apart every time you leave your friends and your new this new dynamic. But then at the same time, I feel like I developed like some kind of distance instead of thinking in my microcosm and seeing my problems as world problems. I realized that nothing was really important, and also I was in that phase where I didn't want to be the new guy anymore. So I would identify pretty easily dynamics and patterns of people in order to fit in very quickly in the missing spot of a group dynamic, and lose that new guy status, which ultimately made me kind of accustomed to be what people expected me to be. So I kind of it's a phase where I was, when you're supposed to tackle the person you're going to be in your adult life, your masculinity and everything, I was just playing a role kind of. So I didn't really know what I was doing apart from trying to be a people pleaser, and so acting was kind of an emergency and a revelation, because it felt so safe to have this blueprint of a human being where they tell you how he speaks, moves, thinks, and I was like, oh, this is like, if I play by those rules, I'll be fine in opposition to my life where it's just pure improvisation.
That's interesting. So through improvisation, you found the most stable and predictable kind of like aspect of your life. I really identify with that. I don't know if you're aware, but I moved to LA, to Hollywood, when I was 12. And in fact, these two, so I didn't really finish middle school because my academic career was interrupted by becoming a professional actor. And then these two were, at one point, they've been middle school teachers or administrators. So that's just, again, our...
Yeah. Actually, a lot of what you're saying about moving really resonates for me, because I moved not 18 times. That's really, I've never heard of that, but 7 times. I moved to 7 different countries before the time I was 18. And so what you're saying about friendships and having to start over and developing perspective and also learning how to adapt very quickly all resonates. But I think in my case, it also made our family quite close because we were the only thing that was constant. And I'm curious, I know it can have that effect, but it can also have the opposite effect. I'm curious for your family, what was the impact?
It's a very good question, actually. Yeah, it was weird because my father, being a professional soccer player, it's a very demanding time-wise job. So he was training every morning, every afternoon, and would leave on Saturday to rest with the team in a hotel near the location where they would have a game on Sunday. So it was mostly my mom educating us. So I don't feel like it created that sense of community or consistency you're talking about. It was mostly confusing. It gave me a big sense of loneliness, mostly. I feel like Italy was a defining moment, because we were moving from different cities in France, but Italy was a different culture and a different language and a different state of mind and a different world. And when you're young, it's very, very far away from home. I was 8. They throw me in an Italian school, which didn't make sense back then, but today I'm glad they did, because you're a sponge when you're young and you absorb a different language and culture very easily. But when we had to leave that place, it was the hardest place I've ever left. And I would have stayed there easily. I felt like I had found the place where I wanted to grow and make friends and start building something real. And after that, I kind of subconsciously gave up on the idea of wanting to settle anywhere. And after that, I feel like something subconscious decided to be like just this ever-moving entity, and then to always need to be stimulated by discomfort.
How old are you when you left Italy?
I was 10. I was there from 8 to 10 in Parma. Side note: when you have like an excursion in with your class can you say excursion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, field trip.
Field trip. In Parma, you go visit the Parmesan cheese factory.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's an interesting one.
What then were your anchors, your rocks? So I'm thinking of like people who might have been that, but then also I'm thinking of like, were there movies? Was there music? Were there books? Well, at that age, you start to cling to things, and you become, your mind is coming alive. So I'm wondering about that.
There was, I don't know why. I really, really connected to Dance with Wolves, and I guess I didn't know it back then, but I realized later on that the story of this fish out of water guy who wants to explore the frontier before it disappears, and instead of trying to change the people on the other side, is going to fit in and become one of them, and I really resonated with that story. And I didn't realize back then, I was too young, but it was it was kind of what I was going through. My Indians were just the new cities I was visiting. And so that movie really followed me for a long, long time, and it's still in my top 3. And sometimes I talk about it with friends, and they're like, "But it's so aggressively American," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's I love it. It's
Aggressively
yeah."
Yeah. I feel like everything Americans make is just aggressively American.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of apart from my grandmother, who always supported me and always gave me all the love I needed. I always felt a void in my family because my mom had a lot to work on, and she was, being the wife of a professional soccer player is very demanding, and she was the artist. She was a painter, a singer, an amazing cook, and she kind of put all her artistic fibers aside to just raise 4 children, and I believe it created a bit of frustration, and so the way she communicated her love wasn't verbalized, wasn't physical. It was you had to take the hints, through her cooking or little tiny things. So my grandmother gave me that very basic I love you, hugs, papa, and so those were the 2 constants, my grandmother and wolves.
Yeah. And Kevin Costner.
And Kevin Costner.
America's father. Luca, what was your relationship with your siblings at this time? Because you mentioned feeling lonely. Do you think they were going through something similar and you guys weren't talking about it, or?
I have an older brother, and we're pretty close, but it was entering a phase of I'm. It was just 2 years older, but when you're in college, it's just like it's a mountain. It's
Of course.
couldn't talk to his friends, and my younger siblings, they were twins, fake twins, we say in France, just a girl and a boy, and they had their own thing going on. They were just their own team, in their own bubble, and so I was kind of the guy in the middle that had no problems, that had nothing to complain about, and so maybe required less attention on their perspective. But I turned out to be the most sensitive and the one that really needed to be taken care of. But I never verbalized it. It's also my fault. I didn't know how back then, and I developed this superpower of pushing people away when I need them the most. So it's a weird condition.
It seems to me that there are some universal things, and some of what you're describing feels certainly feels similar to me. I know that 12 to 20 for me was the, I think, most challenging period of life thus far. We shall see what the future holds, right? But
where were you at that age?
So at 12, I moved to. Those are the 8 years that I was in LA working, or not working and being frustrated. But I guess but I was also an only child. At least I grew up an only child. My half sister is so much older. We never lived together. At this point, then, what did you see on the horizon? If acting, I mean, you started these classes. So did that become something you thought you might do, or did that just become something that you treasured that was like nice, but you just were like, all right, I'm gonna keep going to school? And what did you see? What were the options open to you, and where did you think you'd end up then?
It really didn't become a thing until later on. I never thought like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is gonna be. It felt very volatile, like a lot of people want to do it, and I didn't have enough confidence, or I didn't feel like I needed to be. I was the solution to any problem or any storytelling or anything. But that comes with self-love, I guess. But it took me a long time to actually seriously pursue it.
I've heard you say that you think that if any conscious person, if they're confident, then it's an act, like it's pretend. And that resonated with me. I feel the same about myself, at least. I don't know if it's true for everybody, but I wonder if you can think back to that time of like 12, 13, 14, if you can think of a particular moment where maybe you portrayed confidence, you projected confidence, but inside you felt afraid.
I feel like at that age you portray a lot of confidence. It's the worst kind of confidence because I feel like at that age it's when you start thinking that you know everything about everything and you have so many certainties and you couldn't be more wrong. So it's when it's a slow motion car crash, and your parents are trying to warn you, but you want to cut ties and you're like they don't understand anything anymore. And I think we all go through that. Some are smarter than I, but I was never a crazy teenager, like super rebellious, but I was filled with certainties, and I had a lot of disappointments and humiliations as well. I feel like life is. I read that book called The Five Wounds that prevent you from being yourself, and it's very interesting. And they talk about humiliation, injustice, rejection, abandon, and I always forget the fifth one. But we all have a major wound, and a bit of the other ones, and it defines your physicality. For example, abandon, you kind of want to disappear, so it's a very thin, very, and I had humiliation, so I kind of built can you say carapace, a shell, like a total shell. Sorry, I'm doing all this in a foreign language. Bear with me.
I know, it's incredible.
Remarkable.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I don't know why I'm talking about this book. I lost track of my
No, I
my train of thought,
want to
but
read it. It seems so meaningful.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I think I've heard of that. I've definitely heard of that, and it sounds like it's a framework that really has something to it. You named a few of these wounds. You defined yours as humiliation. Something we do on this show, really kind of like the key idea, the core idea back in the day when we first started it, was thinking about these like awful, awkward, humiliating stories from this time, from growing up. We like to ask guests if they have any awkward or embarrassing stories, but I'm also thinking, if you're willing to share, what if humiliation is, at least in English, a little bit of a strong word to use depending on the context.
Yeah.
How is it that humiliation marked your growing up years? Are there one or two kind of instances, or is it just a way that you felt?
For me, humiliation was maybe embedded in the fact that since I was playing so many personas, I was being an imposter, and I didn't want to be found out or discovered, or so I guess it started. Those personas also worked hand in hand with me started to lie about a few things, just because I didn't have a past with those friends. I could kind of shape reality, and you're at an age where like you're trying to do anything to get what you want and to be loved and accepted and validated, and I would shape reality sometimes. And I guess it's a dangerous game to play, because once you start, and you can obtain anything by just changing a word or shifting something. It once it circles back, which it did for me, it's not even humiliation anymore. It's a full on questioning your personality and life choices and shifting in a. That's when I started actually building the person I am today. I decided to be in truth. When in doubt, truth it out. I decided to just only seek truth, and it really changed everything.
Penn and Sophie and I are all practice the same spiritual practice called the Baha'i Faith. And there's this quote that's like very well known in the Baha'i community, which is truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. And it's this idea that even if you can like excel in every other way, if you're pointed in a direction that's not truthful, none of them have value. Yeah. So I think that's like such a powerful lesson and just like really helpful to hear, and like reaffirms that belief.
Thank you.
Yeah, you strike me as a very humble and you strike me as a truth seeker. I mean, just your countenance and the way you're speaking and reflecting about yourself. So I know that you may feel as though, you're describing struggling with that attribute, but our weaknesses become our strengths and our strengths become our weaknesses, you know? So it's kind of a beautiful thing, the way that works out. I can say it's beautiful. You might, you might say, well, it's been really hard, but.
No, I think you're right. Actually, I haven't heard that sentence in a long time, but it never made more sense to me. You're absolutely right. I have zero notes, nothing to add to that. I know we're supposed to make conversation, but this should be
no.
the
But
end.
if we nailed it, we nailed it. You know?
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
What about like romantic relationships or crushes, or you know, I mean, be like that's such an important part of life at that age, and then every stage after. How was that for you?
And we have this stereotype in the U.S. that the French are like very romantic from a young age, and I'm curious if that stereotype is true. Is true or not? Oh la la. Yeah.
Yeah, the show made it. Amplified everything. But all the cliches and like the things I hear, it's I feel like I spent most of my life until my late 20s just prioritizing relationships, long relationships, because I early on I discovered that it was the fastest way to grow up, through someone's vision, accepting to be vulnerable, and also it was the fastest way to accept some of the things you thought were defaults or issues, or like physically wise, mentally wise, and to be able to be fully yourself in the presence of someone else, and to see that you're not a monster, or you're not weird, or you're not a deformity, or it's mind opening. It's crazy, and then it opens a field of just experimenting, and also losing someone is makes you grow 10 times faster. Yeah, it was this is kind of the only thing I was interested in. I didn't see why I should spend any time on anything else than, you know, finding the truest, the most intense form of love possible. It's like that. I don't know if you in 1998, John Krakauer, who wrote Into the Wild, was part of an expedition on Mount Everest, and they, you know, you have different levels, and the last camp, you enter what they call, I think, the dead zone, because you have to wear oxygen masks, and the last part is very hard, and so you get to the top, and then you come back down, and you just take your picture, and you leave, and you have to have perfect weather, and so they went on this. They started the last ascension, and they reached the top. And on the way down, the Mount Everest, they went through the worst storm that ever happened on Mount Everest in over centuries, and everybody started like falling. There's also a thing where when it gets so cold that you actually feel like you're too warm, and you start undressing, so people started like freaking out, losing their head, and so the few of them that made it back to camp witnessed, like, I think 17 hours later, one of them coming back from the mountain. They left him for dead. His tank was almost done. He was like face on the snow, and this guy came back 17 hours later, and he was like, his nose was frozen. He lost it later on, his hands as well. But when they asked him, what happened? We thought you were dead. You were out of energy, out of everything. He said that I just thought about my wife and my daughter. And it just, and they actually did a TED talk about this. And it's just crazy for me that love is the only thing that doesn't require nutrient or food or water or anything exterior. It's an energy that can fuel your entire body just out of a thought. And so that's why I've always been fascinated by it, but not on the simple level. I think it's very, very complex.
Lucas, we usually will press our guests to tell us a story from middle school, but for every question, maybe you've given us like the beginning of a story, but mostly you've just like given us lesson after lesson after lesson. I feel like you have reflected so deeply on your life already that there's already a lesson in every question. And I'm wondering, what's your process for reflection? Maybe it's something specific, or maybe it's just your way of being, but like, do you write? Do you sit in thought? How is it that you have all of these at the ready?
Do you meditate?
I'm not good at meditating. I wish I was. It takes practice. I just believe in silence, honestly, which is close to meditation. But I think the time you don't spend talking, you can spend it listening. And I feel like one of the biggest problem we have nowadays is a lot of people have a lot of things to say and nobody's listening anymore. So I try to. There's actually a moment like this in La Grande Bellezza. I don't know if you saw that Italian movie where there's a scene with this I think is like a painter or an artist, and the main character asks his friend, is like, why is he not talking? Why is he? It's like he's not talking, but because he's listening, and he says it in Italian. It's really beautiful, and it's crazy the thing you can understand and see when you're just contemplating and listening, and yeah, a lot of people have a lot of things to say, so I'm trying to listen.
I'm going to read back a quote to you, which I know can sometimes be uncomfortable. So apologies, I'm going to do it anyway because it's really thoughtful. So I read this I think it's in a recent interview. You said, being an actor can't be defined by success or celebrity. If it vibrates within you, if it's a need, if discovering who a character is helps you to discover who you are, if it's therapeutic, then it's worth it. I think we're all hurt or traumatized and are looking for answers within acting, or maybe for a massive amount of love within a short amount of time. For actors, there's always a void to fill. Today, we're being sold the idea that we can have everything all at once, so we feel like choosing is renouncing an infinity of other possibilities. But it's when you choose, when you commit, when you engage, that life starts happening. I read it multiple times. I think it's so profound, so meaningful. There's so much that you could explore. But my question is, what answers have you found in acting, and which questions continue to fuel you?
First of all, most of that quote, I took it from I don't know how to pronounce it in English. Goethe.
Goethe. I guess
Goethe.
People avoid saying that name in English, I think.
Yeah.
So you say Goethe?
Goethe. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
honestly,
Goethe.
I've not said it out loud much. I've read it more than I've said it out loud.
Yeah.
Here's the opportunity.
Yeah.
I read a beautiful thing he said about choosing. It's just a tiny little 10-line poem about choosing and how when you choose, providence engages with you and little signs appear to help your decision. And so I was kind of working around that. But I feel like what's interesting, it's my personal experience, but acting is about, is about truth. And since I found out that it can be therapeutic, every character I play, out of my long-lasting career and the 100 movies I've done, every character I play, I give him one of my traumas or one of my wounds or unresolved issue or whatever, and it plays it's kind of a double win because I kind of it take it away from myself, and so I kind of resolve it through the character, and at the same time I give my character something real, which helps the character to be honest and sincere, and I work around that wound to build his essence. It's a weird industry. It feels like when it starts, when things start moving and you get into the hamster wheel, it feels like you need to find way to make your own therapy through a project, find vacation within a project.
Yeah.
But it's very weird, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'd be curious to know how you feel about it as well, honestly.
Man, yeah. I mean, well, what you said about it being truth, like somehow finding truth, you have to find truth in what you're doing because everything else is 100% false. Like there's not a single thing about the moment or what you're doing or allowed to do, nothing that you're wearing, nothing that you are saying is what you've chosen to do. It's not spontaneous at all. It's like 100%, 1,000% constructed. Everything is leading up to this moment, and then you have to somehow discover a way for it to feel true, for it to feel real, for it to seem spontaneous. That is the skill you're honing, which is so valuable in other places in life. It's like, because it is being present, kind of despite all of that. And those moments that you fall into being truly present, spontaneously feeling what you're meant to feel exactly as you're meant to feel it, because you have been able to forget how false everything is. I mean, including the person you're looking at. Sometimes they may not really be in it, you know? Sometimes like they might be, but they might not. And but there's these unbelievable mercurial moments, like catching a really big fish or something, you know? It's like, as a fisher, I know. I've literally caught one fish in my life. Yeah, it's a really special thing. And you strike me as somebody who is sort of doing that. You know, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass and say that it's like, you know, you're just this unprecedented truth seeker in this, but I mean, just honestly, you strike me as somebody who's discovered this too, and you're just kind of like, all right, this is the way I'm living my life, and it's really cool. It's, you know, not always what people expect from one Netflix star to another. It's just not what people tend to expect, right?
I'm glad you're the one who mentioned it. I won't have to.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of I'm actually doing I'm doing press for Libre or Freedom. I don't know. I think it's not a great name, Freedom, but I'm finishing press for my Netflix show as well, and since now it's a two-parter. I don't know if they do it with yours as well.
They've done it. They've done it for the last. Maybe they've only done it for
just
for
the last
season
one.
4. Yeah.
Which is not for any artistic reason. It's just for people to just subscribe
it's so
long
they
enough.
can get more subscribers. You know? I think it really works for Stranger Things. Stranger Things works because Stranger Things is like, you know, every episode is an epic.
But we for some reason it was the biggest press tour we've done. We went to Amsterdam, New York, LA, Krakow, and a crazy place, Paris, and it's, you know, it's a show about fashion, about Paris, about hairspray and so on, and
your favorite things.
Exactly, yeah, in that order.
The things that define you.
It's so weird because now we're having this conversation, but it's so weird for the last month. Most of the questions I've been getting is where do you get the best croissant in Paris, and what is your favorite?
Wait, but I want to know. I want to know. Can you just send a text after?
Yeah, we don't want to ask that same lame question. But
Yeah, we'll offline about that.
Look, the irony, I think, is that New York City has taken so many of the bests from around the world that chances are you can get the best croissant in New York City. That's my...
No.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
But I've been to, look, in Paris, if you're going to go to any place, yes, Paris is the place, because you can just get, you know, you're going to you're solid if you really want a croissant. If you really want one, you know. But I think if you want the one that is gonna make you know, I really feel like, I bet you it's in New York City.
Probably get it in New York. Also, New York has great water, so our dough is amazing, but the butter is better in France. So.
But also, you know what's interesting? Just on the topic of
just while we're on croissants.
Yeah,
Lucas, I think, was about to praise us for not asking these questions, and we've been like, all right, you opened the door.
This is interesting. Finally, we've been wanting to ask.
Okay, no, ask about your wardrobe.
I brought that on myself.
The first season, I think, of Chef's Table, they said something really interesting because they found the best pizza in Japan.
Yeah.
And they were saying the reason is because in Italy, there's so much, there's routine, there's things you have to follow, you know, there's tradition. But in Japan, they don't have to follow any rules because nobody's making pizza and you can make it however you want. And so I often find that that's true. Like you find the best of something that's supposed to be iconic in one place, you find it elsewhere
in another,
because
where they're not afraid of
tied to
breaking rules.
tradition.
Yeah.
Well, you should tell Italy because they're still trying to make croissant and it still tastes like
It's
absolute
terrible.
garbage.
Terrible.
Okay, Luca, we should talk about Gabrielle. Obviously, this character is really beloved and has catapulted you to sort of international recognition, which I don't know how you feel about that. I have a suspicion. But it would be really great to
I
hear
feel
sort
as
of
good
your
as
journey.
as Penn does about his show.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, there we go. That's an easy one.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear sort of your journey of getting the show. And then I'm also curious, I think the show has adjusted. I'm now going to introduce my personal theories and biases. I feel like the show in the first season was more stereotypical about French people, maybe in a negative light. And over the seasons, it feels like it's showing a fuller picture and we see more scenes in French and stuff. But
Less
particularly in
croissants,
season one,
I think, by season 4, maybe. Is that?
but particularly in
By-
season one, it did feel very stereotypical. So I'm also curious, how did French people react to you being part of the show? Were they mad at you? Those are sort of my two questions. What was your journey of getting the role and what was the reception in France?
The journey was actually funny. It was a month and 5 editions, and by the last one, I started being confident. It was out of 200 people, it was only 2 of us, and they called me one morning and they were like, "So sorry, you're too green. Paramount doesn't think you can handle 5 months of shooting for your first project. It's too big for you." Which I kind of understood, and at the same time I was like, if you don't give me a shot, I will never have experience. And so I went into the shepherd's house we were talking about to make goat cheese and stuff, to forget about all this, and at some point someone asked me for my phone. Some guy that was going God knows where. It was like, can I borrow your phone? I need to call my daughter. And I was like, there's no reception here. And he's like, but if you go like 40 minutes away, you walk to that big rock, there's like a couple bars. And so we left with my phone, and he eventually came back and he was like, when I got service, your phone was blue, you know. That's an impression of a French hiker. And I had like 30 missed calls and messages and so on. So I got back to Paris, and before I knew it, I was at the Lutetia. It's a hotel in Saint-Germain, and I was in a room with 2 producers from Paramount, 2 writers, Darren Starr, our showrunner, a director, and Lily Collins, our main actress. And we did a chemistry read, and I was so confused that I didn't know what I was doing here. And and they I don't know, they kind of led me to think that I was auditioning for other guys that she would eventually date in the show, but not the main, not Gabrielle. But they still gave me the scenes from Gabrielle that I knew by heart at this point. And I was like, it's a bit harsh, you know, from them to, you know,
Yeah, right.
play with the
Rub it in
knife.
my
I'm
face.
like, come on, guys, don't you have anything else I can read with? So I kind of went like, I know the lines, and we did the chemistry read, and apparently, it turns out Darren Starr, our showrunner, wanted me to be Gabrielle from the start, but the studios were like, he's too green, and once they did the table read with the other actor, it was like that. He's not the part. He's a great actor, but he's not the Gabrielle I'm looking for. So he pushed for Paramount to fly to Paris and to meet me in person. And and in that room, I actually talked about goat cheese for 15 minutes. And
Like, that's our Gabrielle.
yeah. And when I left the room, I was like, I can't believe what is wrong with me. And afterwards, you know, Lily told me, I think that's what made the difference. You know, it's
Right.
it's the and they called me to the next day, telling me, okay, it's you, and you're starting in 2 days. And it was
Whoa.
it went from to it was really fast.
From an outside perspective of someone who does believe in like divine forces that assist us, and you talked about that poem and like providence will enter, it seems like in a way it was your destiny, like for that man to take your phone, try to reach his daughter, let you know
Yes,
about.
yes. Darren loves that story, by the way. And Lily still thinks I invented all of it. I do believe that, when things are supposed to happen, they happen,
Yeah.
They have like many trajectories, but they will happen. And I also believe that life doesn't give you what you want unless you're ready to receive it. And I'm kind of glad I didn't. I don't want to say make it, because it's a very, very nuanced. But I feel like if I had experienced what I'm experiencing now, back like 10 years earlier, when I really wanted it even more, maybe for the wrong reasons, I don't know who I would be right now and how I would survive this crazy circus that this industry is.
Yeah.
So actually, can you take us back to a little bit? So we've spent a lot of time reflecting, like with so much sobriety. You clearly have, you've gained maturity and some wisdom. But so take us back to when you had less. You were newly in LA, and were you ever chasing it the way that you just kind of indicated for a moment?
It's weird because when I moved to LA, I was just I get asked a lot. So were you pursuing acting? And I didn't do anything in LA. I was there for a long time, and I was just living with nothing, and I would ask $1 to a friend every day, and go to Taco Bell because they had this 99 cents burrito.
By the way, I lived off of that burrito for a period too.
Good.
Right before Gossip Girl. When I read that, I was like, that burrito.
Yeah,
You guys are twin
very
flames.
burrito.
it's so big. It's such a big thing. It saved my life. I started working in restaurants and supermarkets and stuff like that, and I would wake up every morning and go to this website that had like announces for student films, because I was trying to get on student films and gather enough like images to make a demo and find an agent. Back when I thought agents were a necessity, and then I registered into a commercial agency, so to speak, and I did like a little commercial for a bank and a little commercial for this and that, which it helped me sustain my absence of lifestyle, I guess. But then I 2 years before Emily in Paris, I decided to drop everything and to pursue acting unapologetically, and just don't have any parachute. I feel like, and I was like, I have so many friends that wanted to do it, but at the same time still have the security of being a real estate agent or stuff like that. And I was like, I feel like if I take this as seriously as I feel it in my heart, it needs to be the only option. And for that, I took a leap, and I entered an acting school that is only revolves around benevolence and acceptance and depolluting yourself. And I couldn't have been in a school where there's competition and people are just like, and they created this tiny little bubble where you trance dance, meditation paint, and all those things. And on my last day of class, as I went out to get a sandwich, I ran into this old friend of mine who was casting director for like reality TV, but turned into an agent. And she was like, "Oh, I always appreciated you. Do you want me to? Can I represent you? I'm an agent now." And I was like, "I don't think it's the right time. I'm still studying." And she said, "I'm just going to send you stuff, and you'll tell me what you think. Yeah, there's nothing to sign, no commitment." And the first thing she sent me was Emily in Paris. And it just happened like that. But to answer the question shortly this time, it probably at 29 when I started to make it the only option, and then being super serious about it.
Before we transition to your new project, which Sophie will lead us down that path, I wanted to ask you one final question about Emily in Paris, because you mentioned earlier that you like to infuse your characters with a real trauma of your own. And if you're open, would love to know what piece
do I
of Luca
infuse in Gabrielle?
Yeah. I could. He felt darker in the final season. I will say, he feels a little more nuanced.
Well, it's actually the writing, and maybe it's part of me not wanting to be there anymore. No, I'm kidding. It's
It's a well-received joke on this show, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's just there are so many boys next door. I feel like through the years that I've been portrayed in many shows, and I was like, well, what can I bring? What can I bring that's going to be a bit refreshing? Because also it's the most difficult thing I've ever had to play is the overly confident boy next door. So I was like, let's make him a modern man. Let's infuse femininity and vulnerability. That's all I wanted. I wanted him to be in tune with his feminine side and vulnerable. And there was a voice in my head that is like, because I grew up in this world that is like has a bit of toxic masculinity. So there was always a word in the back of my head, like 1% saying like, people are going to think you're weak or your character is like a... But I just leaned into it. I made that choice and people connected to it. But the thing is, it kind of works when the writing is uplifting at the same time. And since in season 4, everything went dark, it became kind of a sad character. And I would love for him to get a bit of stamina again, because it's a bit more fun to play in that particular show.
Thank you.
So your latest project, Libre, is stunning. I feel like it has a very distinct visual style right away, and the music is so good. And I'm wondering, when you were auditioning for the role or before you took it, did you have any idea of that visual style, what the aesthetic would be like? Or was it shot on film? It looks like it was shot on film.
It wasn't shot on film, but they achieved that render.
They did it really well.
Yeah. And I know Melanie told me that she didn't want to fall into the caricature of making a 80s style render like they do 70s style movie. And even for the clothes, they didn't want, sometimes you watch a movie about the 70s and everybody looks great,
Yeah.
From the guy at the vending machine and she wanted something imperfect and image-wise same, but it turned out, most people told me it looks like it was shot in the 80s, which I think is a great compliment for Melanie. But it's all her. She's an amazing director, honestly.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Sophie and I were texting about it yesterday because we got the screeners yesterday, and like, oh my God, have you seen it yet? And the visuals. And I was telling Sophie, like, I can't think of the last time I saw a period movie that felt like it was actually from the period. Like, you can just always tell that they're trying to recreate the period. But this one, it was like, oh man, I really feel like this is a period movie. Like, they did something really, they just like really pulled it off. So hats off.
I think it has something to do with the mullet,
Yeah.
The fringe and the mullet, it just make the difference.
I actually was thinking as I was watching you, and I thought, this hairstyle is going to come back just because of this movie. Because
it's actually already back in Australia. Everybody's.
Oh,
I feel like it never left there, to be honest. I feel like they always stayed mullet strong.
In the penal colony.
What was it like for you playing somebody who not only was a real living person, but somebody who had died? I've done that once before, and I found it to be, we've had kind of spiritual leanings in this conversation. I'm curious, as you approached Bruno, like what that was like for you.
You kind of want to respect him, respect what he represented, what he stood for, and who he was. And also you want to respect his family, his friends, and at the same time, you have to kind of make it your own, because even though the research is fascinating, it's the best preparation I've ever done before a movie. You have to bring a bit of yourself, so to appropriate yourself. Sorry, it's not exactly
Something like that.
Something like that. There's a sense of a mission,
So our last question is take as little or as long as you want with it. If you could go back to your 12-year-old self, to 12-year-old Luca, is there anything that you would say or do?
I would say you're loved. You're forgiven. and you're trying your best, and it's enough.
Beautiful.
That's really beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Really, really beautiful. Luca,
And,
thank you so much.
and don't wear those tight jeans anymore.
Yeah. Everyone's going to be wearing wide leg. Don't worry. This was such a lovely, thoughtful conversation. I really appreciated
really.
talking to you.
Yeah,
Likewise,
we're so
very
grateful.
much.
You can watch Lucas Bravo in Freedom on Prime out on November 1st, and you can follow him online at Lucas N. Bravo. I'm not saying Luca because it's like saying Chile. Okay?
Peru.
I will.
I
I'm
just
not going
went
to try
a
that hard.
restaurant.
I could tell when I said Lucas, Penn got closer to his mic. We are so excited that you can now listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music. In fact, you can listen to any episode of Podcrushed ad-free right now on Amazon Music with an Amazon Prime membership.
Is it your older brother who became the agent, the football agent?
He's a lawyer.
Lawyer. Okay.
Mostly criminal law, but he also had a degree to his resume, which is football agent. But he's mostly. Sometimes I call him. He's like, "Can I call you back? I'm in jail with a client," which sounds so crazy. But
Wow.
yeah.
Okay, and then so also our research is all done online, so it's fallible. I don't know if it's accurate. You have a sister who she studied psychology and she has gone into that.
She's a Pilates instructor.
Okay, great.